Who said that the new salary cap was going to limit trading? My word. What a deadline in the NBA. Obviously, it gets kickstarted over the weekend with the gigantic blockbuster Luka Doncic on his way to the Los Angeles Lakers. We have, for those on YouTube, we got breakdowns of that trade and the three-team trade with De'Aaron Fox and Zach LaVine and others. That one is up on YouTube right now, so just go search and check that one out. But also, if you're looking for the Raptors breakdown, that's going to be in a different spot. We just talked about that. For live streamers, for people watching on YouTube, it's in a different video. So, the Golden State Warriors make the big move around the deadline, the one that we've been talking about, as they send Andrew Wiggins, Kyle Anderson to Miami, Dennis Schroeder is on his way to Utah, and the Golden State Warriors bring in Jimmy Butler. So, we've said for a bit, Golden State needed to take a home run swing. This is that. If you can get the most out of Jimmy Butler, then this is a really big deal for them. He hasn't been that guy in a little bit, and he has obviously been more of a headache than not. And the difference between this time and when he left Minnesota in that way is that this is now an aging player. And so that becomes a bit of a concern. Now, that being said, Wiggins and Anderson, a couple players who I like, they cannot reach Jimmy's level. So again, the best case scenario of this trade is a really big win for the Warriors. You take a little bit of the creativity off of Steph, although, I mean, not a ton, but you take at least a little bit of the burden off of Steph. It's another player that teams have to worry about, and defensively he can still be a bit of a menace on that side of the ball, and there is a championship pedigree, that at least a championship attendance pedigree that comes with Jimmy Butler. So it does seem like the best case scenario of this trade makes a lot of sense for Golden State. I said before they needed a go-for-it move, and this would qualify. This would certainly qualify for that. Also, Wiggins, it is really inconsistent. Anderson, kind of the same thing, only lesser. And Schroeder was always just kind of a piece that came in. And it sucks for him because I think it's not like he's been traded at every deadline. The guy just wants a home. So hopefully he can land on his feet wherever he goes after a Utah buyout. But the good thing about this for Golden State is that they get their next superstar, or their other superstar anyway, and they don't have to give up Kuminga or any other real young pieces in this trade that they feel really great about. On the Miami side, I think this is a really good win for them. Getting Wiggins in a first is a great recovery for a guy who just absolutely did everything he could to sewer his trade value over the last 3, 4, 5 weeks, even just basically all season, right? Like he has not done them any favors in trying to trade for him. And so to be able to land on your feet with Wiggins and a first is a really, really good job. I think it adds an interesting scoring punch with to go along with Hero. At the same time, we've seen Wiggins be pretty strong defensively to go along with Bam. They have a couple of really young, interesting pieces there. And so I like this for Miami quite a bit. And now with Anderson as well, it gives you a little bit more depth. And so I like this from a Miami standpoint. And I'd said that they needed to sell. But now you look at kind of what the rotation can be for this team. It's not that bad. I think they can do a couple of things now with this. I said before, we'll see where if Dennis Schroeder can land on his feet. He actually can. I forgot about this part. He has been traded to the Detroit Pistons. And I actually kind of like it for the Pistons, who it seemed like they've taken a bit of a step this year. And maybe you would like to see them be a little bit more active at this deadline, but it brings another adult in the room to help out Cunningham. Moving on, the LA Lakers continue to make big deals as they acquire Mark Williams from Charlotte for Dalton Connect, Cam Reddish, a 2031 first, and a 2030 pick swap. I will admit, not a whole lot of viewings of the Charlotte Hornets this year. So Mark Williams isn't super someone who is on my radar, but a lot of basketball people seem to be really high on this guy. Really athletic, big man, can help them out defensively in the exact ways that they are looking to help them out. And so this is, I think, a really, really interesting move for the Lakers. And it's the type of big that they were looking for, that they were desperately in need of, with all due respect to Jackson Hayes, that he's just not the number one center that this team needed, especially from a rim protecting standpoint with Luka out there now, and that, defense not necessarily a strong suit of the man. So I think that this from everything that you read about the kid, this does seem like a very interesting fit. And it also, I think it balances a few things with the Lakers. Like, obviously they are in win now mode. When you make that trade for Luka, you have a 49-year-old superstar, you want to be making a push towards a championship. LeBron's not here to, oh, well, let's hope we're good in a year or two. He wants to win now and makes that very clear all the time. So now this helps them more. I like Connect as a player. I think he's an interesting piece, but I think Williams, for what they need, fits what they're looking to do right now. And that, I think that helps them out. But also, I think the future parts of it kind of balance off a little bit, where Connect and Williams both have interesting upsides going forward, so you don't lose anything with the future. You do give up that 2031 first, but that probably lost some value with Luka Doncic coming in at 25 years old. By that point, he will be 31. And they're still probably going to be not so bad the way that it may have looked with that pick a couple of years ago. So I think this is a really, really smart use of your assets by the Lakers. And now for the Hornets, you get an interesting prospect in Connect. A 31 draft pick that, again, it doesn't necessarily have that same value, considering that the player that you're going to take with that is 12 right now. Tough to judge that part, but it helps them down the line, and it gets an interesting player in Connect onto their roster. And Reddish, every team for a while is thinking, you know what, I think we can get the most out. Maybe Reddish can flourish in this spot. So we'll see what he can do. But overall, it seems like this is a really, really strong move for the Lakers. And Rob Pelinka, I think in 1 week basically, has changed the perception of him dramatically out in Los Angeles. The Milwaukee Bucks making a move, this one coming down yesterday, as they acquire Kyle Kuzma, Patrick Baldwin Jr., and a second for Khris Middleton, AJ Johnson, and a first-round pick swap. That is with the Washington Wizards. Hey, Crash, how's it going? So, Middleton was having trouble staying healthy. And when he was healthy, he wasn't producing in the way that he could, and certainly not producing the way that his contract would need him to. So it's a bit of a financial move for the Milwaukee Bucks to get under that second apron, allows them to get a little bit more flexible when making a few more moves. And just thinking back on it now, I don't like they did make a couple kind of tinker moves, but they didn't make that really big one. And this is kind of the problem that they are in. It's, okay, you've freed up some financial flexibility with our guy, Middleton. You don't really have the assets now to do anything else with it, though. So, okay, that's great. But it does kind of seem like this is you know what? We kind of need Giannis and Dame to be amazing anyway. Middleton isn't going to help at this point, so let's roll the dice and see if Kuzma, he's been, I was going to say third best guy on a championship team before. That might be a bit of a stretch. But he has been a guy at least before on a championship team. And so maybe you get the most out of him in that way. But this is a bit more of a financials thing. They save $30 million because of the luxury tax. Like I said, Kuzma, not fantastic. It's been a down year. Maybe Milwaukee is hoping that playing on a good basketball team will help him with the Bucks in a playoff race. Yeah, Crash, we're still talking basketball, man. They give us a lot to talk about. And I've said before, basketball is one of the most fun sports to talk about because there's always so many moving parts and teams are so aggressive because of how basically how you need to be built to win a championship. So basketball teams really make this sport a whole lot of fun to talk about. One team that isn't a whole lot of fun to talk about all the time, the Washington Wizards. Kuzma's value wasn't going up. He was struggling in this setting and clearly wasn't going to be a part of their future going forward. And so get him out the door while you can. You get Johnson, the 23rd overall pick in last year's draft. Sneaky good move to help them rebuild. I don't know if loading up on 2024 draft picks is really the way to build a championship team, given how down that draft year was. But it's something, right? The Wizards just need a thing. So you get that. And then Middleton, maybe it's a buyout. Recording this at 5 o'clock on 5 o'clock Mountain Time, on Thursday. So if something has come down on that and I just missed it, my bad. But maybe they're also hoping that he just actually can put up some big numbers in Washington, get his value back, and then assuming he's going to decline a player option, which if he's in Washington, probably, then he's an expiring, and maybe you get a trade to a contender this time next year, and he can get his value up for one more big contract. So I think that is kind of the motivation in all of that. It's not, from a basketball standpoint, it does kind of feel like it's the Bucks taking a step back when they really couldn't afford to, if you're just looking at the competitive window. Anyway, the Sacramento Kings make their second big move of the last little bit as they acquire Jonas Valanciunas from the Wizards for I haven't had to say this yet, Sizako, and 2 second-round picks. Apologies. Again, this guy bounced around. He was in the 3-team trade the other day. Didn't come up in our breakdown of it. So if this is the key to the future now of the Washington Wizards, we can all look back on me mispronouncing his name and have a good hearty chuckle about it. But the big one is obviously that this is a move to help out Sacramento. It's basically part of that 3-team trade the other day as our boy City there, and one of the second-round picks came in the swapping of stars and all of that. But I like this a lot for Sacramento. It gives them a significant talent upgrade. And like Sabonis and JV, it might be a bit of a tough match, but you can get them out there. And so you could conceivably, close with JV, Sabonis, DeMar, Levine, and Monk. Kind of punting on point guard here, but you could conceivably close with that unit, and that would provide some very difficult matchups. For a few teams there. Or, like, as the game is going on, JV can go on the bench. You have him, you have Carter kind of running things at point, and you have JV and Lyles on your bench. That's a pretty good second unit from a team that has had some trouble scoring with the second unit for years now. So that they've built up an interesting depth situation. So I actually, considering Fox didn't want to be there, and considering how the season has gone, I think this is a really nice save the last couple of days from the Sacramento Kings, and the Washington Wizards certainly existed in this trade as well. The Cleveland Cavaliers bolstering up their situation with DeAndre Hunter. Cleveland acquiring DeAndre Hunter from the Atlanta Hawks for Karis LeVert, Georgie Niang, and 3 second-round picks and a couple of swaps. Hunter is a better fit in Cleveland, and better fit than LeVert, with the shooting and the size and all of that. And I think Hunter is a solid player. And part of this, I will absolutely grant you, is I probably overrate LeVert a little bit, but I feel like this is an overpay a little bit for Cleveland. Like I said, I've always liked LeVert, and I still think there's a bit of potential there. And it's tough for me to think that the difference between Hunter and LeVert is all of that draft capital, along with Niang. Now, again, it's a bunch of seconds and some swaps that probably won't hit anyway, so I'm probably overreacting to it a touch. It seems like a lot, but then when you break it all down, maybe it isn't that much. So just while we're talking it out, it's probably a better deal than I think it is for Cleveland. And look, like they're a phenomenal basketball team, and Hunter's going to fit that group really, really well. So you just make that move, and it's 3 seconds, fine. Like if this were NBA 2K that we were playing the other day, Crash and Deeds, and we're trying to get a deal together, and it's, let's just throw some seconds on there until it works. We're doing that every time, right? So it probably doesn't matter too much. On the Hawks side, they had quite a bit of draft capital. Now, a bunch of moves were made throughout the day, so I'm sure a few of these pieces were on their way out. Like I said, you get a bit of potential with LeVert, and we'll see what you can get on Niang, who fell out of favor in Cleveland, but is going to have some opportunities with the Hawks. Atlanta does seem like they are kind of pivoting into rebuild mode a little bit. Injuries have caused some problems on what looked like maybe a bit of a promising team this season. So they're going in a bit of a rebuild direction, and I think you take a couple really interesting shots with this one. Coming up now, a very surprising move, in my opinion. The Phoenix Suns send Yusuf Nurkic and a 2026 first to the Hornets for Cody Martin and Vasily Micic. Nurkic didn't want to play in Phoenix, wasn't playing in Phoenix, I guess more accurately put. Martin and Micic are pretty good depth. It's the first that just sends me. I get that they just made a trade for a bunch of first round to kind of spread out some of the pick love that they have. I still think that this is a bit of a poor use of a first round pick when you have a franchise that is teetering anyway. And I don't know. I feel, like I said, I feel like it's an overpay. Nurkic is what he is. I would not want him on my team either, but I would, if you're going to get him if you're going to trade him just to trade him, then just don't take as much back. Then, like, Martin's fine, Micic is fine, and given the financial issues that Phoenix has, the fact that they're able to build up any kind of depth on this team is actually kind of impressive. And so that helps, but it's the first that is just getting to me. So obviously, for the Hornets, I think it's great. You get another first, basically out of nowhere. Nurkic, maybe he comes in, builds up some value on the Hornets, thrives in the new setting, and off he goes, because a lot can be run. I don't want to say run through him now, like ball's never going to go for that, but there are some opportunities for him there. I think it is a really, really questionable move for the Phoenix Suns. And if you're going to do that, then it feels like there should be another thing coming, and it's not. So I don't know where Phoenix is really going, as they are right on the bubble in a very competitive Western Conference. Speaking of that competitive Western Conference, the Los Angeles Clippers making what I think is a pretty good move, getting Bogdan Bogdanovic and 3 second-round picks for Bones Highland and Terrence Mann. This is a deal with the Atlanta Hawks. I like this trade a lot, and I like it for both teams, actually. On the Clippers side, Bogdanovic, I think, really fits what they need. Just a nice guy, can come in, hit some shots off of the bench, and give them a little bit more of a scoring punch. And Lord knows this team needs any kind of depth right now, given the injury history of basically everyone on the team. So I understand saying, oh, they need depth. Good thing they traded 2 guys. Seems a little bit weird, but this is much more productive depth, I think. On the Hawks side of it, Mann and Highland are kind of the types of players that you're taking a shot with if you're Atlanta in this last little bit. Mann might be able to start on Atlanta and give them some pretty good minutes. Highland has a very high perception of himself and has played on some championship level teams. So maybe there is something there now. With a little bit less pressure and a little bit more freedom, he can go out and kind of run things the way that he wants to. That can be a good thing or a bad thing, but I think they're going to give him enough rope to see out in Atlanta. So I think there are some opportunities coming for both of these guys, and maybe the Atlanta Hawks strike something in this one. A sneaky good move in the Eastern Conference. The Philadelphia 76ers acquiring Quentin Grimes and a second-round pick, their own, from Dallas for Caleb Martin. Martin wasn't really adding anything for the 76ers anyway, and Philadelphia can't really afford any more underperforming big contracts, so ship that one on the way out the door. 100% do that. I think that makes a ton of sense. You get younger, cheaper, and honestly, maybe even a bit of a better fit with Grimes, who can kind of help the scoring there at the 2, take some of the pressure off of Gordon and Kyle Lowry. There's a raise coming for him. He's an RFA at the end of the year, but Philly isn't worried about that right now. They're worried about the here and the now. We talked about them on the teams that should be buyers episode, and it's go time for this particular franchise. They need to really get going, and so I think they would do with this particular move. I'm not sure what Dallas is doing. I mean, it's not the worst trade Dallas has made in the last, let's say, week or so. See Doncic, Luka. But it's a big contract for a guy who has struggled a little bit. And defensively, he doesn't exactly fit in with the defense first philosophy that we are rocking with now all of a sudden. Now, if he can find his shooting form, this is a team that does need some help with that, right? That's why they go out and get Klay Thompson. But that's a big if that the 76ers bet on as well, and it didn't really work. A couple smaller moves to kind of wrap it all up here in this segment. The Oklahoma City Thunder acquiring Daniel Tice and a 2031 second from the New Orleans Pelicans for cash. For New Orleans' side, a blockbuster deal. Fantastic move. Love it for them. Oklahoma City, I think it's some good center depth. Like Chet Holmgren set to come back tomorrow against the Raptors. You get some depth behind now Hartenstein and Holmgren, and just add a little bit more size. And if nothing else, it's some guys who can go out there and foul some people for a couple of minutes while Hartenstein and Holmgren get their rest. So I think kind of a sneaky good ad there for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then the Milwaukee Bucks coming up again here, and the New York Knicks kind of shuffled the deck chairs a little bit. The Bucks acquired Jericho Sims from the New York Knicks for DeLon Wright. The Bucks get some center help. Defensively, it's been a bit of a struggle with Brook Lopez out on the court this year, and so Sims can kind of help with that dynamic a little bit. And DeLon Wright, he has never really been an offensive dynamo by any stretch of the imagination, and he struggled offensively to begin with, and this is one of his worst offensive seasons. So I understand, not great. I don't think, if the Knicks win the championship this year, I don't think we're going to be looking back and, oh my God, and then they got DeLon Wright. But I do think that he is the type of player that Tibbs would love. You know, like he is good defensively. He can go out there and just grind and give you some minutes. And this team desperately needs depth, right? The issue is, will Tibbs trust him to play him ever? But they need a little bit more depth on this team, so they're not running every one of their starters 45 minutes a night, and I think Wright can at least do that, whereas Sims, with Mitchell Robinson coming back, it just didn't seem like there was a place for him. And they got that kid in the second round who's at least filling up some, like 19 against the Raptors the other night, but they at least have a little bit of center depth that they didn't really need Sims anymore, so that this made sense, I think, on both sides. So a lot of ground that was needed to cover in the NBA, but there it is, your trade deadline breakdown. Coming up next week, we'll go over the winners and losers of the NBA trade period.